All right, we are going live. We're going live, and hopefully the audio is coming through nice and crispy. We're about to find out. Fantastic. Audio is coming through just fine. Woohoo! So, good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are at. Hope that you are having a good time this Valentine's month. And yeah, we're all actually almost through with the month of Valentine's. Holy cow. So, tonight we are going to follow up with the most recent writing lesson, which is how to craft subplots. And because we are still in the month of Valentine's, I think it's only appropriate to talk about romantic subplots as well and how you can make those really work. And I just got to say this outright. I kind of have a bone to pick with the whole idea of romantic subplots, especially once we start boiling things down and really understand what subplots are. I think we have to be a little bit more honest and say that there's maybe a little bit less in the way of subplots as there are arcs. And maybe a subplot is just an arc that needs to happen. So we got ISO here, we got I'm Omega, and we've got Arts. Fantastic. Great to see you guys here and chatting it up already. So, and howdy. Holy snakes and howdy. So, let's see here. What shall we get into? What shall we get into first? I want to give people a chance to pop on in and participate, especially because one of the things I want to do tonight, as far as an interactive activity goes, is actually talk about what it would take to craft one of your very own subplots and make it work. Go back and talk about the 3 separate archetypes that I brought up this morning, and see how they can be applied, and also talk a little bit about how I myself have actually used them in some of my own writing, and honestly didn't realize until I started really working on the writing lesson. Which, thank you, ISO, for suggesting that particular topic. The last writing lesson that was suggested to us a while back is knowing. Was a question of how do you know when you're done with the scene and how do you transition on over to another one. So that will be the next the next dedicated writing lesson video. That should be fun. And Tigerman says Glitch now has 18 million subs. Yeah, baby. I know, it's amazing. Glitch just keeps on growing, just keeps on winning. Love it. Ours is, I like how Noelle clings to Chris when she's crossing the road. Chris, make sure you look both ways. God! And Chris keeps getting hit. Saw the subplots video. Noticed when it came out and thought that could be a good stream. Well, hopefully it will be a good stream. And great to have you here, Fabio. So yeah. Let's see here. How shall we get started tonight? Because I was thinking we could just dive either right on into talking about writing up subplots. Also I could pitch to you guys some video ideas that I've honestly been thinking about. We can you can also listen to the rant that's been boiling on the back burner in my brain now for weeks, because I'm just like, each week we stray further from God. Though maybe not in the way that you maybe not exactly in the way that that immediately pops into your mind when I say that. Also, please, everyone, if you're already TV account, you're not late. Literally, the stream isn't even 4 minutes old yet. Actually, you know what? Let's start it off this way. Since the last suggestion that we have to do as a dedicated writing lesson video is how do you know when a scene is over and how do you transition from one scene on over to the next, since that will complete our list of recommendations from you guys, and because these dedicated lesson videos are meant to be a resource for you in your own writing, please put into the chat, do you have any other questions or concerns or any difficulties that you wish to overcome right now that comes to mind of like, oh man, yeah, I'm having like the absolute hardest time writing X. You know what? I really struggle writing Y. And heavens to Betsy knows I suck when it comes to writing Z. And I really don't understand why we're talking about X, Y, and Z. Shouldn't we be finding A, B, and C instead? So put down into the chat what kinds of what kinds of lessons, or say what kinds of topics should we tackle in future writing lesson videos. It can be, again, anything from diving into certain aspects of world building. If you listen to the most recent video for Frieren season 2, I absolutely went off on how George R. R. Martin just does not understand economics, and economic writing is difficult. I'm just going to say that. So if that's something that you're like, I actually would want to get better at that, that's again something that you can suggest. So Violet says, so the nearest thing to a subplot idea of mine seems to have is, other than a more straight on one, in the form of a king of a protector, also helping against the villain. The protector's part itself would be the side bit, while the main focus is on the villain figuring out what could work against both forces. I'm a little bit lost right there. So are you saying that the subplot, Fabio, is the subplot focusing on the protector, or is the subplot focusing on the villain? Because right now it seems to me like the main plot that you're thinking of for your story is focusing on the villain, while the hero or the protector, their personal journey is more of the subplots. So you'll have to clarify that a little bit there in the chat. So subplot focusing on the protector. Okay, then. All right. Anything in particular that you that you wish to kind of workshop in order to play out this idea, or is this just like, I have this idea, just let you know I am writing? Art says, realistic fights. In fan fiction I wrote about Chris in the festival. I had a scene where Tori slapped Chris after suggesting her own son was tired of the infighting between her and Asgore. So we're not just talking like realistic sword fights, we're talking realistic like arguments. Okay. Arts. That is a great topic. You know what? I'm hopping on over to my new list, and we are writing that down. Writing realistic fights, aka fights that don't involve weapons and magic and the likes. Talking things like arguments, getting into a fist fight with a bully, things getting physical between parents and children, between parents and kid. Hold on a sec here. Fat cat is being fat cat again. Come on, honey. This cat. If her every whim is not attended to, she begins scratching up everything. A comment I got indicated it was Toriel slander. The fan said Toriel has never been known to be physically abusive. I countered that Tori and Chris had a moment of weakness that was being pushed. Plus, it's a fanfic. You can explore all different kinds of things in a fanfic. Far too emotionally, and Chris had enough of their mom's quote-unquote activities. And you know what? Again, fanfic. You can explore that kind of stuff. If it was Toriel slander or Tori slander, it'd be more like, and these are all the reasons why Toriel absolutely sucks. Suck on that! Hey, Guy is here. Having a basis for conflict is a good starter, but it's portraying the fight that sets the tone for how the conflict will look like. And there's some good advice and insight right there. Fabio says, I suppose that I haven't thought much of it other than charm the protector, named the third time's the charm, doing other work while looking for, let me use the proper word, the sneaky villainess. It was pretty accidental, but I've noticed the villainess was getting more focus in this whole thing. Sometimes that happens. I'll just say this, Fabio. When I started working on my book Bleed, Steam, and Steel, it was meant to be a book that focused on Zimon's father. And Zimon as a character hadn't even really come into my mind yet. But as I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to write this story about this warlord who's on this dying world, and then I was like, you know what? I don't want to simply look through his eyes. I want to look at him through the eyes of a character who really looks up to him, because a warlord commands respect. A warlord is charismatic and has followers. Otherwise, they don't really become a warlord. They don't stay a warlord for very long if they don't have extra strong charisma. And so this then birthed the idea of Asuka, and immediately the entire story changed. It became something entirely different because of that one character. And I was like, oh yeah, I really want to explore Asuka instead of the warlord. And now that I'm exploring her story, this entire world needs to change. So I know how that goes, Fabio. Guy says fan fiction definitely gives you more wiggle room. I feel it's all on your interpretation and portrayal of the set character. Personally, I like to write characters that weren't fleshed out. And that's one of the great things about fan fiction, giving you the opportunity to explore various facets, at least the way that you could see them going, the way you interpret them, what you wish would happen with characters and scenarios that just weren't as fleshed out as they could be. But it says, I also meant to say that this was my mind most recently has thought of subplot wise. Okay. Well, thank you for the clarification there, Fabio. So Arts, we will get to a writing lesson on making realistic fights. And also sometimes, like, again, when it comes to realistic fights, just like, again, fights without the weapons, fights without the magic, fights without guns ablazing and all of that stuff. One of the fights that I've enjoyed writing the most was a fight that's actually in my book that's coming out, Tower of Seers. So in the Legend of the Ten Lords series, the main characters, Ben and Jessica, travel between universes whenever they sleep. So whenever they fall asleep, they go to a completely different universe. And then when it's time for them to wake up, boom, they arrive just back on Earth, back in their own bodies. Life continues on. Well, unfortunately for the two of them, one of their very creepy classmates also travels between universes when he sleeps. He's also Jessica's stalker. And so because of the things that happen in this magical universe that they go to whenever they sleep, he's now like, I am going to kill Ben, and it will give me Jessica. Yes. And so there is a fight in not quite midway through the next book, but about like a third of the way in, where the creep comes and attacks Ben in the bathroom at school. And I just pumped in every disgusting detail, not necessarily of a fight, but this is what high school bathrooms are like. And you're just rereading over it again recently. I'm like, oh, the worst thing is not that that Gary brought a knife to this fight and is trying to shank Ben. It's that he's trying to shank Ben in the middle of the boys' bathroom at a high school. There is all kinds of nastiness in this place. One wound, and you're worried more about what's going to seep into your wound than the blood you're losing. And so in that case, the fight feels even more realistic because just the setting just is so real. I did not spare any details. Art says, I like Deltarune's Toriel a bit more than Undertale's. She's a bit more complex on a personal level. I agree. Deltarune's Toriel definitely has got way more that she's going through. Guy says, I feel like Deltarune definitely improved upon Undertale's characters. Most of them were static characters with the exception of Flowey. And maybe also to a certain degree, Alphys and Sans. I'll say this. Alphys is a character who definitely grows and changes as you pursue the pacifist route. Sans is a character who I feel you really come to appreciate if you explore the entirety of the game. But they and Flowey are definitely the ones that actually have any sort of character progression, any sort of nuance to them. Unfortunately, Toriel, as much as she is Goat Mommy, is just she's a paragon of pure goodness. Deltarune is like, hey guys, remember how you all love Toriel? By the end of the fourth chapter, we're going to have you feeling all kinds of like, why? But he says like something episodic. We're a group of 4 kids. Okay, so continuing on with the subplot idea, something episodic where a group of 4 kids, one of them a teen, gets split up in a forest, and we individually go through the haunting stuff happening to each of them until they meet up later. Ooh, okay. So, let me quickly put a pin in my my next Toriel comment, because I got something to say about Toriel at the end of chapter 4. But let me actually quickly address what Fabio says right here. This is one of the reasons why I was very happy to do the writing lesson video that I did today, which is that when it comes to subplots, we actually tend to really misunderstand them. The reason being, so when watching what some other people had to say about subplots, it seems as though everything is a subplot. A subplot is a subplot is a subplot. And I myself thought, like, yeah, like in Star Wars, like in episode 4, the subplot of Leia and Vader. And I just stopped and think about it. It's like, yes, by the most rigid application of a subplot, it's technically a subplot. But is it really? Is it really? Because you can't actually appreciate Vader as a villain without what's happening between him and Leia. On top of that, it helps to provide that anxiety, that need, those stakes for the heroes to make it to the Death Star and save the princess. If you remove those scenes, Star Wars Episode 4 actually loses a lot of its heart and soul. And not like, oh, the sweet, gushy part, but rather the anxiety, the tension, again, the stakes are solidified in what we would rigidly call a subplot? Not quite. It's not so much a subplot as it is part of the greater narrative. It is an arc like a thread blended in with all the other character arcs and all the other big things going on that creates this beautiful tapestry that we call Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And so thinking, Fabio, of like a story where, okay, so 4 kids go into the woods, they get separated and they get haunted. Those wouldn't actually be subplots, but rather 4 character arcs that blend together to tell the main story. And so the moment that you begin seeing it like that, you're like, wait a second, then what really is a subplot? A subplot is a plot that is subservient to the greater story, but ultimately is telling its own story within the larger story altogether. As such, it can become actually very encumbering. It can be very distracting. And we as writers, we want to make sure that any subplot that we utilize is complementary to the rest of our story. If it isn't, it becomes a stumbling block. And that's what most people think of subplots being, that they're stumbling blocks that you either put in because you absolutely need it, or you should take it out because it's absolutely bad, but without realizing that maybe that's not actually what that thing was, but rather instead a necessary character arc or a smaller arc within the greater narrative. And that's how we should start looking at subplots. Guy says, the same deal with Sans. So back when everybody loved him, he was the staple of fan fiction. It's really a 9-day difference nowadays that everybody loathed him for the ending. I feel mixed on Toriel about that. I get it, but in the perspective of the child, I get the uncomfortable feelings of it. Sans is just a dick. Or it says, I feel like Cruzy could have happened at the end of chapter 4 if Susie hadn't seen that sight. Chris was leaning on Susie. He was leaning on telling Susie everything, but Toriel and Sans couldn't help dancing the jitterbug. Oh, that dastardly jitterbug. Oh, it has ruined so many good Christian families. Okay. So, real quick. And you guys, and there, and at a certain point in my diatribe, hopefully short diatribe on Toriel, I'll ask you guys for your feedback on it. But Toriel is Toriel is a character who is stuck in one of the most unenviable situations possible. She is a single divorced mother in a small town. Her business is everybody's business. And it's not just that she's a single divorced mother in a small town where her business is everyone else's business. She is the ex-wife to town hero Asgore Dreamer and the mother of town darling Azrael Dreamer and the adopted mother of town gremlin Chris Dreamer. This means that everyone's eyes and attention are on Toriel. Maybe not 24/7, but people know who she is. People are looking at her behind her back. And not necessarily like, oh, what's the newest hot gossip about the goat mommy? But rather it is that this is one of the most important women in the community. She is a teacher. She's someone who was married to the sheriff. She's the next door neighbor to the mayor. At one point, she was part of the gang that was the best friends of the town, that ran the town, the sheriff and the mayor and whatever Rudy did. Toriel being one of the educators. This is a powerhouse. She's part of a powerhouse that was shattered. Everyone knows who this woman is. Everyone's got an opinion on her and on what she does. This means that her private life is so hard to enjoy. We only get to see what Chris is seeing and what, in many ways, Chris allows us to see, or what the plot allows us to see. We don't actually get to see everything else that Toriel goes through, except for a couple of interactions where Toriel is laughing it up with Sans at the market, and we just see her really being herself, having a good time, letting loose a little bit, which is good. That's a positive, healthy thing. And then Asgore shows up. And then Toriel does not handle the situation very well. And there's loads of people watching, not just Chris and Susie, loads of other people watching. And Toriel leaves real quick, very awkwardly. And oh yeah, Toriel will get to hear about that. She'll get to hear about that at school, at church. And so again, her life, her private life is unfortunately not private. She is scrutinized. It's not great. It's absolutely not great. So for this woman, she needs to be able to live her own life. She needs to be able to do what she wants to do. Now then, that has to be balanced out with the fact that she is a leader in the community. That means that people are looking to her for strength, instruction, motivation, stability, even if that's not what she wants to give. When you are a leader, that is what you have to be. That is what you give. You don't have a choice. And if you decide to abandon the situation because, oh, woe is me, I want to take care of myself, there will be consequences to those choices. You may very well negatively affect someone else. And if you are any sort of decent person, that will hurt. So, again, it's a bad place for Toriel to be. So she has to put on an act, whether genuine or not. She has to put on an act this whole time, and to finally then have a moment to be together with Sans and to dance the jitterbug and all of that in the privacy of her own home. I mean, sure, give this goat mommy a chance, but again, she has to balance this with her position in the community, but also being a mother to Chris. And this comes down to that there is a strained element to Chris and Toriel's relationship. Toriel's trying to be a good mom. I'm going to absolutely 100% give her that. But I think it's clear, the deeper that we go in, that this is a mom who doesn't fully understand who Chris is and is overbearing where she shouldn't be and has been absent where she should be. Not it's so difficult to be a parent. I'm not a parent. I'm just an uncle. I've helped raise my nieces and nephews. And I can tell you this, it's hard. And trying to do the right thing, you don't always manage to do the right thing, as sad as that is. And so Toriel will make mistakes and all that. The problem is The problem is that when Chris arrives at the house with Susie, Toriel is drunk. And it's like, okay, it's the weekend, but your kid is out late at night in a town where things have been going on. We already know that Des has vanished. That seems to be an open mystery so far. So hometown is not 100% safe. Add on to that Undyne has gone missing. And true, it's only been a day, but already rumors are beginning to go around. And so where in a town where people go missing, when your kid is out late at night, sure, with a friend, but you don't know where or what they're doing, maybe you should be just a little bit more responsible. Not get drunk. If you want to taste the Chardonnay a little bit, you don't need to be zoused to dance the jitterbug. Maybe also call Chris on their phone like you did in a previous chapter, just to check up to make sure that everything is going safe, everything's going well. Toriel didn't do that. Toriel had a severe lapse in judgment at a kind of dangerous moment in hometown. And now, granted, it's beginning to unfold for everyone else there. So I kind of get it. Maybe she's not completely up on current events. But I think it's very clear that her time with Sans is in response to Asgore rather than her just trying to have just a good time because she needs to have a good time. And that's not really a great choice. Also, and to let me know if you let me know if you agree with me or not on this. But when Chris is in bed at the end of the chapter and is trying to block out the sounds of the music, and Toriel and Sans, their voices going me 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 me. I'm just going to be honest with this right here. The tempo with which Toby delivers those sounds sounds like they're in the next room boinking. And in all honesty, unless chapter 5 tells us otherwise, I'm very certain that that's what was going on. That Chris was hearing their mom boinking the new guy in town. Again, with a life that is, unfortunately for her, not very private, in a moment that was very likely something that was a response to Asgore creeping on her and showing up when she didn't expect it, and just all the pressure that she's under, I understand why that moment would happen, getting drunk, dancing the jitterbug, and very likely boinking Sans while your kid is in the next room. But that is not a great choice. That is not a great choice. So it's like, I understand what happened, and there's a difference between understanding why something happened and saying, I get it, versus like, oh, you're such a horrible person. There's a difference between just saying you're a horrible person, but saying, I understand why this happened, but that it was still not a good idea. And that's how I kind of look at Toriel. I'm like, you are a goat mommy who is doing her absolute best in this game, and we all make mistakes. You just happen to make a bad mistake at a very bad time. And this is not good for Chris or for Susie, especially for Susie. And we think a lot about what this has done for Chris. For Susie, Susie looks up to Toriel. And she's even like at one point like Chris, if you make your mother cry, I am going to beat you up. That's how much that Susie looks up to Toriel, how much she cares about her, how much Toriel's kindness has meant to her as we learn throughout the game. And to see that moment of just absolute embarrassment, Susie understood this was not okay. And for an adult who she thought was always doing the right thing, again, adults make mistakes the same as anyone else. But everyone should do their best to avoid those mistakes where possible. And what Toriel was doing was very much an avoidable mistake. She could have been dancing the jitterbug with Sans and not be zoused. She could have tried calling Chris rather than just getting drunk. She could have told Sans, this is a great night, we should do it again. when Chris is having a sleepover at Susie's place or at Noelle's place, and not while my child is in the next room. So, yeah. All right. So let me catch up then. After I've said all of that, I says, hey, I know a gal who would say that's empowering. It's just sad. Art says Susie sees Toriel as the Grand High Mother, but she's the former Grand High Mother now. Oof, oof. Guy says I like the visual storytelling between Deltarune and Undertale. In Undertale, Toriel walks with Frisk with her eyes directly on her, while in Deltarune, Toriel walks while looking straight ahead. It's a little difference that I appreciate. And that's actually what, you know what, guy, that is really good. I honestly hadn't noticed, but now that you say that, yes. And it kind of goes to show a bit of a distance between Toriel and Chris, which is again something that, like, look, I get it, but it's one of those choices that Toriel has made, and it's a series of choices that have led to this distance between two people who live under the same roof. Bobby says it's certainly at least supposed to give us that feeling. At the very least, it being the case or not. Also, that wasn't the jitterbug just being muffled. It was purposely slowed down by them. For the moment, come on. Susie, paraphrase, we're not just going to let that happen, are we? Oh, yeah. I take a drink of water right there. Yeah, so... yeah, poor Toriel. Again, I understand it. I'm not going to stand here and be all like, Toriel, you awful mother, you. But at the same time, I'm going to say, it's not okay. It's not okay. And I've seen people throw a lot of shade at Sans for it. I'm going to say this. Sans, as the new guy in town, he's not a part of all of this drama. And he's just coming right on in. And for the new guy... New guys and new gals always make mistakes, treading on people's toes where they didn't mean to, where they didn't know they were. Sans just happened to fall into a whole lot of mess and didn't really appreciate, I think, what he was getting himself into. And I think, I'll be honest, I think it's very possible that we might see a little bit of humbling for Sans in future chapters. At least that's my thinking. Guy says, I think it also highlights the difference in circumstances. Undertale's world pretty much revolves around Frisk at that point, while Deltarune Toriel has a lot more to think about. And that's a very good point, Guy. Art says, oh yeah, I've seen parodies where Chris suddenly remembers moves they never did before they know anyway. Ah, yes. It's like, wait, what's this? I will attack Sans. Oh man, I'm just wondering what Deltarune's version of a Megalovania fight is going to be. Whoo, I don't think that the knight was it. Okay, but actually, to think about subplots, to bring on back together, and a romantic subplot. We're hitting all kinds of birds with one stone here. Sans and Toriel's relationship developing on the periphery is a good example of a subplot. And the reason why I say that is because it really is independent of the rest of Deltarune. Minus the end moment at the end of chapter 4, the relationship between Sans and Toriel, it has no massive effect on the rest of the story. But it is proceeding. It's doing its own thing. And it brings depth to Toriel. Like as my little quick diatribe hopefully revealed. It goes to show just how nuanced and difficult her situation is as a single divorced mother in hometown. And her relationship with Sans, I keep saying Sans, with Sans, brings out a side of her which is good, which is free, which is healthy. The problem is that Toriel, as we come to learn, is very capable of making dumb choices, which sadly clashes with the wise mother figure that we see in the previous chapters. It also helps to highlight what we have suspected since chapter 1, that her relationship with Chris isn't the most healthy or positive, that there's some distance and misunderstanding there. And that is what a good subplot does. While it's telling its own concrete story and developing its own characters, it provides greater understanding and depth to the world that the greater narrative is taking place in, as well as developing characters who we likely would not have gotten to know quite as well by just following the main characters. And it also gives you a chance to develop themes and ideas that might have encumbered the main narrative too much. Now then, what's happening with Sans and Toriel is what I call the necessary detour subplots, meaning that it's telling its own story, it's going off and doing its own thing, and it suddenly becomes relevant at a moment in the plot where you're just like, whoa, wait, what? And that was when Chris and Susie walk in on Sans and Toriel dancing the jitterbug drunk. Because for Susie, and this is the important thing, it's mostly important for Susie. We focus a lot on Chris, but for Susie, who has just gone through this harrowing adventure in chapter 4 and has gone through a lot, has experienced a lot, and learned a lot. Susie found a teacher who she cares about, who she really learned from, Gerson. She didn't like, I don't like teachers, I don't like school, but Gerson was someone who encouraged her to learn, encouraged her to be herself, encouraged her to grow in her own way. He was being an excellent teacher. And so Susie just discovers this love of learning. She really does. You can see Susie growing in a fantastic way through her interactions with Gerson, who is, though, the other teacher in town who she actually respects and cares about, even though she hasn't learned under her? Toriel. So as Susie's found her own personal favorite teacher, she has this other teacher back in hometown who she loves and admires and looks up to. And then to see that symbol, that vision that she has of Toriel ripped apart to shreds so quickly, that's just rough. That side plot, or that subplot, that necessary detour comes and blindsides Susie right at a time where she feels incredibly vulnerable after facing down against the knight and then the titan. Sure, with Chris's help, she's beaten the titan, but the knight has gone away again, trashed the church. They're nowhere closer to getting into the bunker and rescuing Undine. And if I'm correct, Father Alvin by now has probably also been taken, which means that there's 2 victims who need rescuing. Susie's all like, we're going to be the heroes, we're going to save the day, and then to find that the people that she wishes to save, the world that she wishes to save, is not the way that she envisioned it, because Toriel isn't exactly the person who she had envisioned her to be. I haven't played Deltarune, but I've seen one clip from the new chapter, and that's Chris and Susie's reaction to Sans and Toriel. Yeah, so you've seen that. You've seen the jitterbug dance. Yeah, it's rough. And so why do I call this the necessary detour? Because we wouldn't be able to have that powerful moment with Susie and Toriel without being able to see Toriel develop as a person, get the greater depth of her character and of her situation, see why she would like Sans, why she would want to be with Sans on that particular night, and how it comes crashing into the main story of the heroes almost to the point where it could derail Susie a little bit. And maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into what could happen next, but I feel like this could make Susie even more sympathetic towards a character like Asgore, only then for her perception of Asgore to meet a very stark reality when she has to confront him and his dark world. So, yeah. Tommy thought, how do I end the chapter? Completely ruin Susie's image of Toriel. Bark, bark. Oh, like the annoying dog he is. Let me quickly get what Fabio had written earlier. Maybe what helped contribute, from the few comics I've seen depict Sans and Toriel's night before Chris and Susie arrive, they tend to depict Sans convincing Toriel to drink and all that, subtle or not. Some people do seem to blame Sans more than... some people do seem to blame Sans more on it for whatever reason. Fan comics, of course. Yeah, I think that people want to make Sans a scapegoat for everything that happened there. Just taking everything broadly in the situation that's presented to us, again, I feel like Sans is just, he's the new guy who stepped into something that he didn't fully understand, and now he's got to own it. So, yeah, it's good. Chapter 5 is going to be intense. Now, again, coming back to the whole idea of how this is a subplot, that genuinely works. Because, again, Sans and Toriel's story, or mostly Toriel's story, is almost completely independent of what Chris is doing, or what we as the player do. Sure, we can spy in on all of the awkwardness happening with Toriel and with Asgore and with Sans. There is the unavoidable moment where Asgore springs out of the bushes to confront Toriel and ask about what the plans are for when Asriel's back home. Oh, and present her with the flowers. It's so awkward. Oh, Asgore. Anyways, where am I going with this? Where am I going with this? But yeah, in any case, other than that one event that we can't escape, Toriel's story moves on completely independent of what we, the players, do or what Chris does. And so as a result, her experience with Sans truly is its own independent story, off doing its own thing. But it's a subplot, like I said, as a necessary detour that swings around and comes and reunites with the main plot, at a critical moment that is then meant to either impart special knowledge to us, shake things up, empower the main characters at a critical moment, or reveal some important information. In this instance, it's absolutely a shake-up there to shake Chris and Susie's confidence, especially Susie's. Stepped into what he didn't understand. That's a joke worthy of Sans and worthy of sending Papyrus absolutely over the wall. Art says, she gave into urges she's held back on for a bit now. Exactly. And again, it's just it's yeah, like, you can't really blame her. It's only natural, and to a certain extent, it's healthy when done right. She just didn't do it right. Again, I say that if Toriel had tried to reach out to Chris and let them know, hey, things are happening at the house. Like, oh, I've got a friend on over. If you want to spend more time with Susie, that's a-okay by me. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Take the hint. That would have been fine. Or if Toriel's like, no, Chris will be coming home tonight. I can't get zoused. Like, sips. Like, again, sip the Chardonnay, sip the wine, whatever it is. Sip the bubbly. Like, don't get zoused. Be a responsible parent for the night. Or again, if you're having a good night with Sans, but and like, again, people are like, but when you're feeling it, you just go with the flow. No. I will say this. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest and shove back on so many uncounted millions of people who say otherwise. As a responsible adult, if you're gonna be a responsible adult, there are times when you know that the mood is taking you in a certain direction, but you realize, no, I have responsibilities, or I have something else. I got something else I need to do. Or no, now is not the right time. No, not this situation. Or sometimes even, no, not with this person. That's when you say, no, you got to put your foot down. Even though the energy and the flow is taking you there. If you're a responsible adult, you're like, nope, nope. Why? Because I respect myself and I respect you and I respect anyone else involved in this enough to not create a problem where a problem doesn't need to exist. And unfortunately for Toriel, she did not take that stuff into account. Her being together with Sans, totally fine. Her wanting to dance the jitterbug drunk, totally fine. Time and place, proper setup to make it happen. She didn't do that, and that's where she's at fault. And that's the problem. That's where the problem lies. It's not that in what she did, it's in how we got to that point. That Chris and Susie come home to that. Not to drink vacation juice during non-vacation times. Exactly. Don't drink the vacation juice during non-vacation times. And also, when you do drink the vacation juice, pay attention to where you are and who you're with. Be responsible. There you go. Life advice and lessons from Lars here at Camille's Harem. We aim to help. All right. So there we have it. There's one romantic, quote unquote, subplots. Subplots. Let's see here. Let's see here. What other, actually, because I'm like, oh, it's so much fun to talk about Deltarune, but we should also talk about subplots. Let me take a quick drink of water and see what inspiration hits me as I take a drink. Good non-vacation waters. Okay. You know what? Because we're on the topic of Toriel, let me also go on a quick diatribe of Asgore. Is that okay? Can we do a quick Asgore diatribe? We're going to do it anyway. I am not as harsh on Asgore as a lot of other people are, even though a lot of what he's done rightfully gets torn to shreds. I'm sorry, but stalking your ex-wife is not okay. I don't care what delusions of grandeur you're laboring under. It's not okay. You do not chase after someone. You do not chase after someone after church with a bouquet of flowers when they absolutely do not want it. Again, it's not okay. Asgore really fumbled the ball there. Now then, the thing is this. A lot of people are like, yeah, Asgore didn't ask who Susie was. Didn't get her name. He's a bad father. Asgore doesn't ask Chris how their day was going. He's a bad father. And whatever. It just continues to then roll on from there. What we get a hint at the about partway through chapter 4 is that Asgore actually has been doing quite a bit. Asgore's flower shop is not doing as well as it should because he's a horrible businessman. So he's been working for Carol, and Carol's been helping to pay the bills, so long as he helps to take care of the big house, which is pretty good, pretty important because, well, Rudy is not doing well. While Rudy's in the hospital, someone's got to check in on Rudy and someone's got to take care of the house. It's a manor, for crying out loud. And houses require constant upkeep. They require constant cleaning. If you don't take care of a house, even a small house, that house very quickly becomes a liability. Now multiply that by an integer of whatever for a manor, and that's a lot of work. So Asgore has been busy. He's been busy helping out Carol, who's been helping to take care of him. Well, it's not necessarily the best situation in the world. It is what it is. It seems like he is trying to be responsible, which is a good thing there. And while Asgore's focus is also very largely on Toriel, which it shouldn't be, Asgore, more so than Toriel, is concerned with how things are supposed to work out. Uh, how things are supposed to work out with Azrael coming back to town, and it is kind of a big deal. Asgore is right to be concerned, though he's not necessarily concerned in the best way possible. What are things going to be like when our son comes home and things still aren't great? Asgore knows that the situation between him and Toriel isn't fine. Like, he's not oblivious to it. And so he's trying to figure out how to make a good, healthy situation for Azrael's return. The problem is that he's not doing it as an equal partner to Toriel, but he's trying to do it to fulfill his own dream, which again isn't very good. Now, Arts does bring up, how about the letter she sent him? No rent again. Sell flowers. You have 1 month. Yeah, it's Carol owns the flower shop. Yeah, Carol pretty much owns the town as far as we know. I think it's because Carol's like, look, I like, even for friendship's sake, I can't just keep dragging you along, Asgore. You need to get a life. Carol's like, you need to get a life, buddy. You need to get back on your feet. You need to have a job. Having a job is a really good thing for anyone who's stuck in a rut. Let me tell you that. It is good to have a job because that means some money. It means interacting usually with other people. It means building up skills, and having a little bit of extra money on the side is a positive thing. Asgore needs to work. He needs to work at something that he actually enjoys, like his flower shop. And so yes, he's not a good businessman. He's not being a good ex-husband. But the thing is that when you look at Asgore, you realize he is trying, which almost in a way is a bit more than what you can say for Toriel in some cases. Asgore is very proactive, just not proactive in the ways that are most helpful or most healthy for him. And that is where you can absolutely fault Asgore. It's like, buddy, let's take all of that creativity and energy and let's put it towards something that will actually help you. If you can do that, you will go places. For crying out loud, this guy was a hometown hero. This guy was the sheriff. He's got skill. He's got knowledge. He's got connections. He could be doing very well for himself, but he's just too hung up on Toriel. That is his big weakness. That's something that you can very easily fault him for. And obviously, all of his stalking shenaniganery, that's not okay. But when people just immediately say, yeah, no, this guy's just awful, he's an idiot, he's a pariah, that's not giving him credit where credit is honestly due. And that kind of thinking is actually, I think, the kind of thinking that helps to kind of push him towards what he will be doing in Chapter 5. Very likely opening up his own dark world and everything that's going to lead to. Let me catch up then with what you guys have been saying here, because I've been pontificating long enough. I suppose in the bigger game project, I want to make lots of off-screen and optional character development to be seen in side quests, optional dialogue, if they stay, and elaborate on them. So yes, that would be subplots. And here's something: video games are way better geared towards actually balancing subplots the way that people think subplots run. When it comes to books, if you try writing a book with the same narrative structure as a video game, you're very likely going to really bog down your book. An excellent example, I know I love ragging on George R. R. Martin, but it's honestly the truth. George R. R. Martin wrote the Game of Thrones series more in line with how video games handle their cutscenes and side quests. As a result, the pacing for any of the Game of Thrones books, or say any of the books in A Song of Ice and Fire, beyond the first book, which is A Game of Thrones, is atrocious. It's so bad. And it's infuriating the moment you begin to realize what he has done to the pacing and to the narrative. It's like, George, you could be doing so much better. You know better than this. Why are you doing it this way? But yeah, video games are definitely better geared towards handling subplots the way that we think subplots should be handled. But Art says, How about, yeah, we got the letter thing. I definitely want to see Asgore elaboration soon enough. However much it can tear into our hearts. I saw a fanfic once, even though I haven't played the game. Asgore and Toriel got back together because Asgore saw that Toriel was dating Sans in the fic, and he grieved and found comfort in another. Asgore dates someone else. I don't remember who, and Toriel saw this and got jealous. That is not healthy. Drama ensues, plot happens, and they realize that their new partners were just coping mechanisms. It was a little strange, but an interesting idea. Yeah. I mean, and it's true. It's true. Sometimes the people that we try to get into a relationship with are more coping mechanism than anything else, and that's not healthy. That's not good. I've been there, done that. It's stupid. Don't do it. It hurts you. It hurts them. And Art says the whole funding his death investigation is to distract him from what Chris and Carol are doing while giving him some sense of purpose in that regard. I think Carol cares about Asgore more, and I agree. I think that Carol does care about Asgore, hence why she's trying to help him out really in any kind of way possible. But at the same time, there's definitely manipulation going on. Asgore is trying and pressing on just in the wrong direction, while Toriel is stagnating where she is. Guy, I think that's a great summation of the situation. I agree with that. Asgore is proactive, but not in a way that's healthy for others or himself. Being a hometown hero while also being in a complicated mental, possibly moral situation. His situation in Deltarune is definitely a much subtler version of Undertale's Asgore. Oh, absolutely. Guy says each medium is presented differently, so they must be made differently. Exactly. But here's the thing, though. Strong writing is strong writing across all mediums. It's that we tailor how we tell the story. That depends upon the medium. Visual mediums allow you to do so much more than you can do in written word. But written word can also at the same time convey the important details in an exquisite, impactful manner that visual media almost has to club you over the head to communicate. Survivor says there's definitely more there, but it's sort of the package as Asgore gets in all realities, it seems. Yeah, poor Asgore. Now that I have a theory that I hope to make a video of before Chapter 5 comes out, and then we'll see how Chapter 5 vindicates or tears apart that theory. But in short, what I see is that the way that I see it is that Asgore wants to be the hero again. And we get a glimpse of that mentality in Chapter 3. Even though he's not in Chapter 3, the shows that are presented to us have cowboy stuff. Well, who seems like the cowboy guy in the Dreamer family? It's Asgore. Toriel is the nurturing baker and mother and teacher. And we know that she's wild, but when she gets wild, it's jitterbug wild, not I'm going to sling some guns and shoot some desperados. Yeehaw! That's not Toriel's kind of wild. That's more Asgore's kind of wild. Because we also know that Azrael, his interests were in making video games. He was a track athlete. He was a high achieving student. And he was up to shenaniganery with Pizza Pants and Caddy and with Des. He was doing teenage things. He doesn't comment. There's nothing about anything that we see or hear about Azrael that communicates cowboys. And with Chris is definitely not a cowboy kind of a kid, which means that we're getting glimpses into who Asgore is and was. And so I think Asgore really tried to live up the identity, whether it was earned or not, that he's the hometown hero. Everyone should look up to him. And losing Des, being unable to solve her disappearance, the mystery of her disappearance, really shattered Asgore's identity, how he perceived himself and how other people saw him. And I think that served not as the first cracks in his marriage with Toriel, but rather the wedge that slammed into those cracks and widened them. Because again, chapter 3 presents to us details of the fights between Asgore and Toriel. Wasn't pretty. So when bearing all of that in mind, what Asgore wants is Asgore wants to be seen as the hero again. How does he do that? He's got to do it in such a way where he finds Des and shows everyone the truth. And although we know that Carol is doing her part to kind of redirect and misdirect Asgore, while at the same time trying to help this poor lunk get back on his feet and be positive again, I think that Asgore is a little bit more in the know than we are giving him credit for. And Asgore potentially opening up a dark world in his flower shop or somewhere else is not so much him being super desperate, although it's definitely born out of that to a certain extent. I also think that it's Asgore being all like, it's hero time, baby. Oh, yeah. And when you're trying to be the hero, and this is where I think Susie's really going to get pushed. Trying to be the hero is not an easy thing. In a way, it's actually easier to be a hero when you're not wanting or trying to be the hero intentionally. But when you're intentionally trying to be the hero and save the day and be the best and be the greatest and be there for everyone and everything like that, you, I think, set yourself up for more mistakes and potential downfall than you realize. Because you're no longer just doing the right thing because it's the right thing, but you're doing the right thing because of what reward you're hoping to get at the end. And that's the problem for Asgore. Asgore is trying to, again, be the hero because of what he hopes to gain out of it, rather than simply doing the right thing. And that's what Susie is going to kind of have to learn and ask herself. Am I trying to be the hero because I want something? Because I want love? Because I want acceptance, attention? Or am I trying to be the hero because, crap, that's the right thing to do? I think that that's going to be Susie's challenge going into chapter 5. Okay, so TV Count says, like, how do you know if the subplot isn't taking over the story? And Fabio responds to TV Count say, well, in my case with Charm and Villainous, that's what happened. But then I turned Charm's part into the subplot and I gave the Villainous more of a main plot. And that's one thing that you can do. But the TV Count, the way that you know that the subplot is beginning to take over the story comes down to when you've effectively spent more time and effort and space on the subplot than what is necessary. Let me give you some math, and like this, and right here is some good writing advice that I didn't really get into in the video, so I should definitely give it to you here. You need to understand, like, this is something that I know is very hard for Discovery and Garden writers who are just coming up with the stories they go on, but you need to know about how big you want your story to be. It will change, it will fluctuate as you write, but are you writing a short story? Are you writing a novella? Are you writing a novel? If you're writing a novel, how big are you expecting it to be? Any subplot within your story should never take more than 20% of the overall written word. The moment that it goes more than 20%, that thing better be just part of the main plot, absolutely, because otherwise it's taking up too much time. So real quick here, something for words. So a short story is 5,000 words long. So short story equals 5,000 words max. So a subplot would be 1,000 words max. Now, that's 1,000 words out of the 5,000 words. If you're trying to tell a story within 4,000 words, okay, sure, that can be really fine. But do you really want, so T account, sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. Could you repeat that? Any subplots that you write should never take more than 20% of anything you're writing. If it takes up more, it's no longer a subplot. It's quickly consuming the plot. And it could very, very easily take away from it. Now, look at what I put right there into the chat. Your short story is 5,000 words max. A subplot taking up 20% of a short story would mean that you have 4,000 words for your main story and 1,000 words for your subplot. When you look at that, I want you to honestly ask yourself this. Is it worth writing a subplot in a story that short because you now have taken away 1,000 words that you could have put towards your main characters? Like honestly, you don't have, people need to answer necessarily in the chat, but think about that. Is that a good thing? Is that really a good thing? Now then, let's try a novella. A novella is about 40,000 words max. So that means then, if you're going to use up at most 20% of a novella, that means 8,000 words max would be geared towards a subplot. And what Art says right there, I just stick with the A plot in that regard. Yeah, I mean, I would as well. Like, a short story is not worth a subplot. It really isn't. At that point, you might as well just make the subplot its own short story. And then you could, like, have them be together as an anthology or something. Like, that's honestly the better way to go. Now, for a novella, when you look at that, 32,000 words towards writing your main story, still novella length, a very respectable novella length right there, and then 8,000 words, towards the subplot. Does that sound reasonable? And yes, Guy, there is indeed. Sorry, I didn't get to your thing earlier about do we have a writing Discord? If you would like to join our Discord, and this goes for anyone else who wishes to join our Discord, let us know in the comments to this video or to any other video. Just say, hey, I want to join the Discord. Leave a comment. We will come to you in the comment section, and we are going to have a very brief interview. Find out what you're interested in writing, what you would like to contribute to a writing group, what you're hoping to get out of a writing group, stuff like that. Once we've conducted the interview and we get to know you a little bit better and we know what you're looking for and how we might be able to help you, boom, you get added to the Discord. For one thing, this helps us get a better idea of who you are, how we might be able to help. Second of all, it really weeds out the trolls. Every troll who has tried to jump onto our Discord, when presented the interview process, not a single troll has made it through yet. Might happen in the future, but so far it's done a really good job of preventing trolls. So it's a way of helping to protect this Discord, as well as also helping us to help you, and you helping us at the same time. It's fantastic. What's the base pay for joining the Discord, good sir? It's free. It's free. You don't have to pay anything to join the Discord. Isn't that fantastic? We don't charge you anything. We actually, like a couple of years ago, we actually talked about it, about like if we would ever charge anything for the services that we give. And maybe like at a future day and time when there's maybe when there's something more substantial that we could actually give to other people as a service, then maybe we would charge for it. Or if we have merch, then we would charge for it. But in all honesty, a writing group should be free. Being able to interact with other people, to help each other out with your own stories, to get to receive recommendations and advice and all this stuff, that should be free. That shouldn't cost you anything. And I feel like that really helps to promote a much healthier creative environment for everyone involved. Let me take a quick drink here. Good drink. Okay, for me, I plan out my story, understand what works and what doesn't, double down what works, and save what doesn't for a rainy day. That's a good way to approach it. Absolutely good. And thank you, Arts, for the recommendation. Yeah, Arts joined a little while ago, and yeah, I think we do have a good group of people over our Discord. And I like all the stuff that people share, even if I'm not always able to get to it as fast as I would like to. The joys and struggles of being busy, of having a job, of having to be a respectable, responsible adult. Anyways, so again, coming back to it, TV account. So a novella, 40,000 words max makes a novella. 8,000 words max would be a subplot, giving you about 32,000 words. Now, let me tell you something about my own experience as of right now. So I'm working on my sequel to Tumblr. And one of the subplots in the story is of Miku Lyrian, the main character. Her writing group has various other dragons in it, and there is this dynamic between two dragons. One who they shorten his name down to Shia, and the other one is Disharmony. Now, Shia has a massive crush on Miku Lyrian. He really speaking of Lars, did you see my nightly advice in the Discord? I haven't yet seen it, but thank you so much for your commentary on the Trial of the Seven video that I posted there. For those who don't know, well, jousting is not the proper way to put it, because most people think jousting, they think of on horseback and hitting each other with lances. ISO has done training in various blades, good old fashioned HEMA style, and dresses the part too, and has shared with us on Discord some of his videos of participating fencing. There we go. There's the proper way of putting it. Thank you, ISO. ISO has fencing, has shared with us various videos of training and also being at special events. And it gives you a good idea of how people have been able to recreate, to the best of our ability and knowledge, the styles and skills that people back in the day had. And so, as someone who enjoys writing medieval, early modern style fantasies, it's really good to get someone else's insight who has more practical experience than my book experience can bring to the table. And so that's something that I'm very grateful to have ISO around in the writing group for. And I will have to read your nightly advice. ISO, thanks for reminding me. Arts, I wouldn't be surprised if Susie used Lancer to hit someone. And Lancer would be A-okay with it. Lancer would become a cudgel for Susie. Now I just have this image in my head of Susie bashing people like the Ents in the Two Towers, when one of the Ents grabs an orc and begins swacking other orcs with it. Anyways, coming back to what I was saying. So, as I've been writing the sequel to Tumblr, I'm looking at this at a, not necessarily a love triangle, but an awkward love dynamic between Miku Lyrian, Sheer, and Disharmony. Sheer has a huge crush on Miku Lyrian. Miku Lyrian isn't necessarily thinking all too much along those lines. She's very much in her craft at the moment. She's not thinking in along the lines of romance unless it is to improve her own romantic writing. So she's kind of oblivious to Sheer. Because Sheer is so focused on Miku Lyrian, he's oblivious to Disharmony showing an interest in him. And so, like, it's a dynamic that I want to explore, that I want to introduce in this book. But because it's going to be a novella, again, that means I have 40,000 words max. And what I realize is that for all these things that I really want to do in this book, especially for Miku Lyrian and her journey as a storyteller, coming off the heels of the first Tumblr, that means that there's really so little time that I can actually dedicate to this relationship. So I thought to myself, man, does this mean I just have to axe it? And the answer is no. I don't have to axe it. It was going to be a subplot. But rather than using it as a subplot, I can use that information that I wish to convey about Mikulirian, Sheer, and disharmony, and as I can impart that awkward love dynamic between the three of them in a different way, maybe way more on the periphery, where as an astute reader, you will realize how Sheer feels about Mikulirian. And you should then be able to also pick up on how Disharmony feels about Sheer. And then you move on from there. So it's something that adds more flavoring to the story rather than its own independent subplot. Even though, by the most rigid explanation of what a subplot is, it technically is one. But rather than taking away time from the main narrative, it ends up being spice to it. So that's kind of my hope now going into the next book of the Tumble Teller series. And so, again, depending on the space that you have within your story to tell the story that you wish to tell, you might come to realize maybe this subplot idea that I had in mind actually isn't, maybe it isn't the best thing to have just kind of off doing its own thing. Maybe it's better as spice to the story. So something to bear in mind there. Let me then catch up with what else you guys were saying. But I'll be okay. I'm wondering if the mentioned scene with the king is just a fun short thing, more than a subplot. If it's just a short thing, it's not a subplot. So it wouldn't exactly be more than. Anyways, the king would see the villainess escaped, and the rest of the scene is him scolding his castle's workers. Do I only train you to fight? An illusion readying everyone ready for later. Lets you know the king found out and will be at the ready. So important enough scene to be considered that. That would be, so Fabio, that would be a scene within the story. A scene is not a subplot. An arc is not necessarily a subplot. A character doing things is not a subplot. And this is where people's really heavy classification and over analysis of subplots, I think, has led people to seeing everything as subplots. But it's not really. And honestly, we need to stop thinking about subplot, but we should be thinking character arc, story arc. And when you think that way, you actually then begin to really be able to identify what truly is a subplot, because that is its own independent story doing its own thing, going off in its own direction, that you as the author have to say, as it's doing its own thing, it must then contribute whatever to the main story. Either it goes off and does its own thing and is fulfilling enough on its own that hopefully it doesn't completely detract from the rest of the story, but that's a risky move to take. That's the independent subplot. The necessary detour subplot is where you go off doing something else like Toriel and Sans, and you come back at a critical moment back into the plot to influence the events that the main characters are dealing with. Then there is the supporting subplot, which is its own independent story running concurrent to the main plot, but things that are happening in the main plot and things that are happening in the subplot influence each other to support one another's stories, even if they don't come back and intertwine once again. Good examples of this can be found in The Wheel of Time, in Gravity Falls, and definitely in some video games. So, yeah. Well, please check out the video that I posted earlier today to at least get the proper structures and think about what those structures might mean for your story. And I challenge people in that video, and I mean it. It's not just simply, yeah, do this. No, I mean it. As a teacher talking to students, draw what I instruct you to draw. Because the moment that you draw it out, you will see, oh, that is not what I was thinking for my story. And the moment you realize that, you're like, I'm not writing a subplot, I'm just writing a character arc, or I'm writing a scene, or I'm writing a necessary point for my overall story, but it's not really its own independent story. Once you realize that, you then know how to address all those moments. You will, because you're not trying to force it to be something that it isn't. That is why it's so critical to envision your story. If you have a hard time doing it, drawing it out helps. There's a reason. There's a reason why I made these little clips right here. Why you get to see me there in front of the whiteboard. Because drawing it out is absolutely critical sometimes to understanding what it is you're really trying to do. And so back in the day when Camille's Harem was actually called Storyboard, this is what we did. We would get around a whiteboard and we would all be writing out and drawing out what we wanted to do with our stories. Being able to visualize it is absolutely critical towards better understanding what you are doing as an author. So please watch the video and draw out what I'm demonstrating in that video, please. Guy says, I love good foreshadowing. I do love good foreshadowing as well. I says, I love teaching people how to write sword fights. I really enjoy it. The amount of people who have never considered half sword or sword knot, the crossguard strike is a large amount of people. Oh, I can understand it. Hey, G Turtle 10X is here. Great to have you here, G Turtle. Woohoo! Yes, and also another friend of mine, Zaza, who we have had here on the channel before. Zaza was absolutely essential in helping me figure out how to better write Bleed, Steam, and Seal, which has a lot of sword fights, because they helped me to realize this is how you pace it. This is how people think and feel in the moment. And so it really, really helped out a lot. TV count, draw what? Watch the video. You see what's right now there on the screen? That is the kind of stuff that was in the writing lesson video that was posted earlier today. And so in that video, I instruct, draw like what you're drawing. You're drawing a big circle. You're writing in plot. You're drawing arrows, what those arrows mean, what all that stuff is. Follow the video, do what it says, and it will guide you in how to better visualize different subplots. Anthony Dixon is here. Woohoo! Hey, hello. This is an excellent presentation. Well, thank you, Anthony. So let's actually back it on up here, since CV account asked, and then I'm going to come back to the whole words thing. So what you see me doing here in this video is I want you to visualize your plot as one big circle. And into that circle, you are going to put down your main characters, your main ideas. What are the big events that are going to happen? So, like, for instance, let's take Whitefire. I've told you guys a little bit about Whitefire. Let's take Whitefire. Okay, I draw a big circle. I'm going to write plots. And what am I going to put in there? I'm going to put in main characters like Eric, Whitefire, Silandria. These are my three main point of view characters. I'm also going to put in a character like Thornbeard. He's our main villain. I'm also going to put into there Jonathan, one of the mercenaries who accompanies Whitefire on her quest to free Silandria from Thornbeard. What is the whole point of this story? Well, these heroes are going to go try to save basically the equivalent of a dragon princess from a dragon-guarded castle full of hundreds of dragons. What could go wrong? Along the way, Eric is going to be on a quest to become a dragonist. A dragonist is a particular kind of person who acts as a liaison between humans and dragons. By doing so, he hopes to be able to find the dragon who killed his dragon lord and led to the death of his family. He wants revenge. Whitefire is on this quest to free Silandria, not because she cares about Silandria, but because she wants to kill Thornbeard. Why? Because Thornbeard is secretly in cahoots with the dragon whom she hates, Stormeye. That's why she's in on this. Silandria is trying to break out of her prison. and she's utilizing all of her smarts, all of what little magic she has left, every bit of leverage she has to corrupt Thornbeard's court from within and bring these dragons to fight against each other, hoping beyond hope for an opening, a chance to escape. Some other big events that come along the way. Along their quest, they're going to meet Metal Zealot, really a creepy dragon. Whitefire is going to have to confront her godfather, who is one of the 4 dragon monarchs. Things like that. That's the kind of stuff that I want you to put into that circle. Main characters, big ideas. These are the moments I want to have happen. This is going to be a story about revenge, about found family, about learning your place in the world, the oppression that dragons bring to the world of Draconia. These are the things I'm going to do. Then I'm going to draw out an arrow of this is the plot progression, and of Eric and Whitefire working together with other mercenaries to save Silandria, Silandria doing her best to break free from Thornbeard. That is my plot in its most basic dumb form. And by visualizing this, you have the chance to write all this stuff out. It's kind of like a little bit of a splash sheet where you could just you blast it all on out there. You get to see it. And you then realize my plot and all of these other things are all going towards one direction, towards the ending that I foresee for my story. And it allows you then to realize subplots, again, are something a little bit different than everything else that I have planned for my story. G-Troll says, drawing helps me out a lot, especially for my game, because I was bored earlier today, so I just started drawing stuff out, and I got a lot of new ideas for characters. Fantastic! Yes, the power of drawing. I'm not a great artist myself, but sometimes drawing just takes you where you gotta go. So let's see here. Let's choose... Okay, let's see here. Let's see which one we got. See which one of the subplots that we got here. So here's your circle, there's your arrow, there's your plot. Here we have the independent subplot. So you see me drawing a little red arrow that's going in a completely different direction from the main plot. That's because it's its own independent story. It's doing its own thing. Now, what you want to attach to that smaller arrow that's going off another direction is what's happening, who's doing the what, why is it happening, and you then have to justify why you've got another story going in its own direction. Why? What does it bring? So, like, honestly, think about it. You're like, yes, I want to have these characters doing this thing in this subplot. But if it's going in a very different direction from everything else, does it really belong? If it does, you have to justify why. That is very, very important. Yeah, sometimes going CW Flash about it can help. Taking a drink of water. Yeah, it says, I like this method. Getting things in your face is a good way to visualize and understand what you want better. Exactly. This is just another way of getting all of your thoughts and everything out onto a page. Doing that just helps out so much. Then let's see here. Let's utilize. We're going to do this one. So here is another way that you can write a subplot. This is the supporting subplot. You again do a big circle. However, this time you're going to do 2 arrows. A large arrow and a much smaller arrow, both going in the same direction. And what I want you to do is I want you to draw connections between them. These connections are the ways in which these 2 plots, the main plot and the subplot, influence each other as they go along. In the video, I brought up one of the episodes from Gravity Falls, which is when Dipper is going to fight against Robbie, and he summons Rumble McSkirmish to go and beat up Robbie. Meanwhile, Mabel is trying to help Grunkle Stan get over his fear of heights. 2 very different stories, and yet, they actually complement each other. because of what Mabel's interaction with Dipper and Rumble is all about. The fact that Rumble breaks the water tower that Mabel took Grunkle Stan onto. So Grunkle Stan's like hyperventilating and dying from his fear of heights. And then Rumble comes up and begins breaking the legs to the tower, the supports of the tower. And so he's freaking out, but when he doesn't die, he's like, yes, I have defeated my fear of heights. Take that, gravity. And so because of that, he's then suddenly totally fine. He would never have gotten there if it hadn't been for Rumble McSkirmish, who was summoned to fight Robbie in a completely different different arc of the story. So main storyline, Dipper versus Robbie. Dipper summons Rumble McSkirmish. Subplot, Mabel helps Grunkle Stan overcome his fear of heights. They share interactions with each other, and they help to lend ideas and support. Mabel telling Dipper when she finally gets to see Rumble, she's like, is this really right? Like, Dipper, you should just talk things out. Be like a girl. And he's like, but that's what girls do. Which at the end of the episode, he and Robbie are all like, we should just talk things out. You mean like girls do? Yeah. Which is an idea he gets from Mabel. And then because he summoned Rumble McSkirmish, Rumble is actually the one who really helps Grunkle Stan overcome his fear of heights. Though tangentially, it was not intentional, but it happened. And then let's see our last one. So I like this type of subplot. TV count, I do as well. The supporting subplot is actually way easier to write, and it makes it feel way more relevant. It also becomes a whole lot easier to view it as its own independent arc. And when you realize that it's its own independent arc supporting the main story, just like one of the many threads in the great tapestry, it actually becomes way easier to write. Now, the third archetype that I present is the necessary detour. The necessary detour is where you draw a line going away, but then it circles back around to rejoin the main plot. This is like Sans and Toriel. Sans and Toriel having their own independent storyline, very, very much off from whatever Chris and Susie are getting up to, but becomes so insanely relevant at the end of chapter 4 when it blindsides you and brings their story home in a way that harrows Susie and makes her question what she's just all gone through, makes her question how she looks up to Toriel, and really challenges her in her desire to be a hero and all that. So that's the value that a necessary detour subplot brings. You're telling another story, it's off doing its own thing, but then it swings around and hits at just the right time to change up the main plots. Tikan says, oh, so this is what these types of plots are called. This is what I'm calling them. If you went into the Google search, you probably wouldn't find them. The reason why I've been naming them the independent subplot, the supporting subplot, and the necessary detour subplot is because these three archetypes very easily sum up the general way that a lot of people utilize subplots. Hey, John is here. It's been a while, man. What's up? Not much right now talking about. The different archetypes of subplots according to Lars. So, in my own writing, so one of the things I discovered, and again, this is why I say don't just think of this stuff always as, okay, this is a subplot, because when I was writing my book, Bleed, Steam, and Steel, I didn't realize, but I was using all three archetypes. But these archetypes, as I used them, were not as subplots, but each one as a major contributing part of the main plots. The independent subplot is General Wesley Arthur, who is going off to war against the Central Islands in the Great Steam War, doing his own thing, dealing with his problems of inner regret, the devil's bargain that he has made, and how that has led him to the city of Damakus and all the insanity and awful things that go on there. Then you have the story of Zimon and Lagatha, which really seems to be like the main plot, since those two really come together and they support each other. They each are kind of like a supporting plot line to the other. Zimon trying to keep the city of London safe, while Lagatha and Emil come to the city of London searching for what the gods have lost. And so Zimon and Lagatha have lots of interactions together. And then you've got Asuka. And Asuka is just kind of off doing her own thing, trying to save her family from dishonor and destitution by doing high-stakes duels. But her journey of trying to save her family leads her then to eventually taking a very dangerous trip out to London, where she blindsides Zimon and Lagatha at just the right time to reveal the real truth of what's been going on this entire time across all 4 storylines. And so there you have it: independent subplot, supporting subplot, and necessary detour subplot, all going on at the same time. However, each one is a main storyline with a main character. They're not subplots, but they're arcs. And that's why it's so important as a writer that you don't just think about subplot, but think about story arcs, character arcs. And I think that when you rethink of your writing in those particular terms, that will actually help you out so much more. All right, so Imega says, so I got 2 subplots in my passion project, one involving someone investigating something in the main transformation device, while the other is one of the antagonists is using data from fights to upgrade the main antagonist. Any advice? So, without knowing more of your story, I'm Omega, what I would recommend is what I would recommend to you is that when it comes to, first off, let's start off with the villain who's getting who's getting the data from all the different fights. I would make that kind of like this common occurrence at each of the fights, that you see this reoccurring bad guy that you're like that the readers at first might be like, why is this person here? What is it that they are doing? And then the reader comes to realize through like a specific dedicated scene of like, oh my gosh, no, they were there. They're there because of da-da-da. Like they're gathering all this information. Oh no, oh, what devious, horrible thing do they have in mind? So what I would do is I would try my best to set up that subplot in the main plot first, before introducing a single scene with that villain analyzing the data. Build them up a little bit. Build up that interest and that anxiety of what the heck is going on behind the scenes. For the next subplot that you've got right here, which is someone investigating something in the main transformation devices, depending on how big you want that to be. And again, this comes down a lot to understanding how big is my story going to be, how much word count, like what's the word count that I can dedicate to it, or what's the time stamp that, or what's the amount of time that I can dedicate in a visual story, like a video game or a movie or a show, that I can dedicate to the subplots, and then kind of plan around that. I would just say have dedicated chapters or moments to the to that subplot, but intersperse it, like break it up. Don't just do it all at once and really slow down the story. You want to avoid that. Instead the smarter thing to do is to say, okay, at a certain point, like the action of the main plot is kind of coming down a little bit. Okay, now I introduce one brief chapter of the guy looking into the transformation devices. Action picks up, main plot goes on for like 4 or 5 chapters, slows down. We then return to that subplot. It's all about spacing and pacing. That would, again, with what little I know of your story, that's what I would recommend. Sometimes I forget you share a name with Steven Universe's Lars. Ah, yes, but I am the superior Lars. I didn't have to die and go to space to become my best self. John Wells, the best subplots are the ones that you confuse with the main story. And true, there's some truth to that. However, I would also argue that like the best subplots are the ones that you realize the main story cannot really exist without. Because they are just so well done. They're so seamlessly blended into everything else. That would be my argument. But so that's what I would say, John. But that's also what you have to say right there. That's some good advice, some good insight. Fabio says, unsure if I got any subplots around. They're more like arcs, scenes. Good. You want to think in terms of arcs and scenes. Other than the side ideas for the bigger game, that is, I'll be more aware once I'm there, I suppose. I says, so a subplot should not only benefit the story, but the characters involved in the world building? Yes. Yes. A subplot should be doing everything that the main plot does. So, like building up the characters, building up the world, building up like the larger narrative, introducing us to themes and ideas, building on those themes and ideas. A good subplot is, yeah, it's doing a lot of work. And when you're able to pull it off, that's when you know that that's like a subplot will just feel complete. It will feel like it's truly doing its job. And so yeah, that's or it's doing the job of the main plots. That's when you know that you've written your subplot just right. That's the just right moment from Looney Tunes that we're looking for. Well, that's good, guys. That's good. Let's see here. Oh, okay, so getting back to word count, so I can say that I've like truly actually finished this one up. If you are writing a novel is over 40,000 words. However, typically people look to it as being at least 60,000 words. So a novel equals 60,000 words, not plus, equals 60,000 words minimum, which means that 20% for a subplot would be 12,000 words. So the thing is this, is that you should, when you start looking at the bigger a story becomes, the more leeway, the more time and space you have towards making those subplots. That's one of the things that that epic stories really have in their advantage. The bigger they are, the more they can tell, the more stories you can engage in. And people are like, yeah, I really like this other character. This side character was just so much fun. They were so cool. Or I really like this little side adventure. Or I really like this little thing that I learned on the side, on the periphery. The larger a story is, the more fun, the more access you have, the more access you have towards really developing strong subplots, and and really then the more fun, the more depth you can have with them. But, and this is very important right here, subplots very, very easily, if not watched after, if not used in the proper place and time, can easily, very, very easily take up way too much time and slow down the pacing of the greater story to the point where people just get kind of annoyed. And even if it's fun, it slows down the main narrative, which is what people came there for in the first place. They're only introduced to the subplot after they've had the chance to get to know your main characters, your main plot ideas. So bear that in mind when it comes to doing subplots. And so he says, it seems there might be way less delay here than how you started, Lars. Oh, really? Oh, well. So I have this villain subplot, more like a backstory or a tangent, where the villain in the past was a kind person who lived with the elves. Then humans attacked the elves during an act of brutality. All right. The villain tried to save as many elves as he could, but his childhood friend and fiancée was maimed in the attack. In his rage, he alone massacred the attacking humans and became very racist. Uh, so, uh, so what? So I saw what you got right there. That so depending on how you present it, it could be a subplot, or it could be more of a flashback, or it could be an explanation. It depends on how you approach it. The thing is that if you make it a subplot, you can absolutely get into way more detail. Then it just comes down to, again, balancing something that happened in the past with what's happening in the present of your story. So that way they complement each other and one doesn't drag the other down. John asks, is there a difference between subplots and the B plots? I'm going to argue no. B plot is subplots because A plot is obviously the main narrative. Therefore, B plot, by just simply being B plot, instantly becomes a subplot. Now, what kind of a subplot it is and how good of a subplot it is then comes down to the storytelling. Again, look to Gravity Falls for some excellent stuff there. Actually, you know what? Let's actually. Here's the thing. It's what I just said right there is not always 100% true. Let's jump back on over to Gravity Falls. The episode Sock Opera. Oh, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. Sock Opera is amazing. And if it wouldn't get this stream copywritten, struck down instantly, I would show you. I would just stop the stream right now as it is, and we would watch Sock Opera. Such a good episode. Sock Opera has in the least homosexual way. Sock Opera has so its main so this is where it gets tricky because which one's the A plot and which one's the B plot? Is the A plot Mabel trying to win Gabe's heart by throwing the biggest, most overproduced sock puppet show of all time? Or is it really the fact that Dipper is, or is the real main plot of the episode that Dipper is trying to get into the author of the journal's laptop, get into its files and learn all the secrets of Gravity Falls, only for him then to be confronted by Bill Cipher, who's all like, I can give you the code, you just have to give me a puppet. And so Dipper agrees and doesn't realize that by agreeing to a demon, the devil's bargain is he's the puppet. And and so then we get Dipper trying to get his body back from Bill. In that particular story, I could argue that that both Dipper trying to get into the secrets of the laptop and of Mabel trying to win Gabe's heart, they're both equally important. They are two that, even though one would arguably be the A plot and one's arguably the B plot, they work so well in tandem that it's not even this is the big plot and this is the little supporting subplot. They are co-equal arcs within the episode that help to enrich each other. You honestly can't have one without the other and have the episode be as powerful and as engaging as it is. And so you have to, sometimes you have to ask yourself, is what I'm writing as a subplot or the B plot, has it actually ascended to a role where it's now become just as important as everything else? And when that begins to happen, you need to find out how you can make the two flow together seamlessly. And that's where a lot of the difficulty starts coming in. So some food for thoughts right there. It What we do as writers is not always completely cut and dry. There's only a handful of things where I can honestly say this is this, and you should never do otherwise. Like one bit of advice is this: if you're going to write a kid's story geared towards kids, said kid story should never have a sex scene. I don't care what you're thinking, what you're planning, who you're writing for. If you're writing a kid's story, that should not have a sex scene. That is one of like the few bits of writing advice where it's like, never ever break this rule. Five says, I mean, going by a give the title importance angle, Bipper in that episode seems to invade the titular sock opera, much like the water tower with Grunkle Stan on it getting destroyed. Does it seem more important to the rest of the show, though? Well, here's the thing. Grunkle Stan... So coming back to Grunkle Stan on the water tower versus Bipper trying to crash the sock opera. With the thing is that what Grunkle Stan and Mabel are doing is running entirely parallel, doing its own thing. It's barely intertwined, except for at certain moments where the two stories complement each other. In sock opera, on the other hand, they are completely intertwined, that you can't really have one without the other. So again, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Like you can say, well, technically it is like this, so therefore yes, it is. Therefore yes, this is a subplot. Yes, this is a B plot, and there you go. But again, like thinking about it a little bit more technically, not technically, but rather than thinking about it so rigidly, but rather instead what they do story wise, it becomes clear that in sock opera, they really are inseparable from each other. They become two important arcs that complement each other in order to tell the full story. Whereas with Dipper versus Robbie, you could take out Mabel and Grunkle Stan's adventure and still have a really fun episode. You really wouldn't lose much other than character developments, which character development is key for any good story. So obviously we don't want to lose it, but you could take it out and it really wouldn't harm the episode much. That's my argument there. Let me take a drink of water. All right. Remember, a kid's story and a story about kids is very different. Still very questionable if you pull Stephen King. Yeah. Ugh. I'll say this. Like, I've been thinking recently about doing a video. Even like, here's the funny thing. As a smaller channel, we could actually get away with doing a video addressing how to write steamy scenes. Oh my. And I thought about like what Stephen King did with it and everything. It's like, yeah, that's that was most definitely a choice. And one of my bits of writing advice in such a video would be like, if you decide to write any such scene of steaminess, no matter what, you have to own it. You wrote it. It's there. And unlike Stephen King, who just never answers questions about something so uncomfortable and just downright weird and bad, you probably should say, yeah, you know what? I wrote that. And here's my reason why. So, like, for instance, in my book, A Study in Blood, there is a very uncomfortable scene that depicts sex between two of the main characters, and it is by any objectionable view, it's not good. It really is not good. One is older than the other. one is definitely in a position of power and is abusing it in order to abuse the other person. That is not okay at all. And it was a very uncomfortable scene to write. So one has to ask, Lars, why did you even bother putting it in there? And in many ways, I arguably could probably have gotten away with without ever having written that, and still gotten my point across about about unhealthy power dynamics, how a character like Vix is looked down upon in his world society, all that stuff. Why then is that scene in there? That scene is in there, and I own it, even though it's very uncomfortable to write. That scene is in there because I needed to get across just how bad this world is for individuals who are called war mages, how they are viewed as property, how they are viewed as things by other individuals, and for our main character Vix, who is doing his best to clear the name of his mentor and to prove to people that hey, guess what? War mages are people too. We have real value. And in that quest to prove something very noble and good, people will take advantage of that. And sacrifices are made sometimes by people who think that what they're doing is the right thing. But when you look back at it and he thinks, Vix is like, yeah, sure, I made a good choice. You as the reader are like, you did not make a good choice. That was bad. And so the scene exists to lift a lot of weight. It was a very hard scene to write, and it's one that I still am just like, I'm not comfortable with it. And it also helped me to realize if I do want to write more such stuff, there's probably a better way to do it if I wish to write it. It's a learning opportunity. And really, for anyone who wishes to write any sort of sexually intimate scene, that's something to think about. Why is this in there? What exactly are you trying to do? Is this something that you can say, yes, I'm okay with this being there? And if not, it's totally fine to not write it. It's totally fine to delete it. So, some heavy stuff right there. It's easy to joke about writing the hot and steamy mattress mambo scenes. There's also some seriousness to it as well that needs to be addressed, and it's something that I do not hear from enough authors, because I think a lot of authors feel very awkward about it and are all like, yeah, if you're gonna write it, I guess you're gonna write smut and go ahead and be like a romance writer or George R. R. Martin, okay? And it's like, no, we don't need to do that. There's nuance to this. Let's be a little bit honest and a little bit straightforward with ourselves, shall we? I find that writing toxic scenes just kind of hurts me to write. I've tried a few times. I only finished one with a very poor product, scrapped, never to be seen again. And that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. Like, if you're not okay with what you wrote, you don't need to keep it. You don't need to keep doing it. That is absolutely fine. I do want to write a good toxic scene at some point, but this won't be a common thing in my stories. I'm more into writing gore, things like torture, vivid injury, and description, which for some people, they're going to be like, why? Why did you do that? Just give me the X-rated material. Isn't that better? To each their own. That's absolutely fine. What works for some people won't work for others. We shouldn't judge each other off of what we find for ourselves acceptable or easy to write, but rather try to understand where another person is coming from. And if it's really hard for someone to write a toxic scene, that's okay. That it is hard, and it's hard for some people to read toxic scenes. So let's give ourselves some grace. Then Stormcrow is here. Great to have you here, Stormcrow. Lars, howdy. Severely late, and I apologize for that. So, quick question. How, in your opinion, can you realistically write a toxic relationship? Example, being Jamie and Cersei. Twincest isn't wincest, guys. And Lars, because you're a man of culture, and you can make a good argument for Susie and Noelle. It hasn't started yet, but that has all the seeds for toxicity later on if Noelle's inner demons aren't healed. And I agree with you there. The Suzelle ship is not as good in terms of healthiness as a lot of people would want you to believe. I'm sorry, it just isn't. Noelle's obsession with Susie is not okay. It's not good. She needs some help. She has a lot of things that she needs to overcome, and just simply getting together with Susie will not solve that. I hate stories that just say, hey, if you get together with this other person, you're going to be all fine. You want to know why I hate that so much? Because I had students when I was a teacher who thought that their lives were going to get better because they had a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And you know what? Horrible, abusive individuals took advantage of those people because they knew that that person was craving any sort of relationship. And so they preyed on that person's susceptibility. And you want to know what? Those kinds of people who fell into those traps were the kinds of people who lapped up those stories of all you need is true love. All you need is that one person who will make you better. And then voila, you become better. Well, you know what? True love and good love absolutely do uplift, enable, and ennoble a person. But realistically speaking, it takes a lot of work for most people to get up to that point. It takes having a healthy, good relationship to get to a point where having another person in your life truly makes you a better person. And they have to be a good person as well. I've seen it way too often in real life where people are in a toxic relationship and justify it by saying, well, this person has some good qualities, therefore it's all okay. It annoys me. And the problem that I have with the Suzelle ship in Deltarune is that it's Noelle looking for healing by getting together in a relationship with Susie. Chris and Susie also both need healing. There's a lot that those two are going through. But for the Cruzy ship, the thing is, to be all honest, Chris and Susie are figuring out their own ways of healing and moving on without even needing to be romantic. A solid friendship and good experiences and valuable lessons along their journey are what caused them to become better people, not the romance that's potentially blooming between them. That is something that people don't understand often enough. And it's a mentality that becomes a real issue in real life way too often. There you go. There's my rant. Now then, to adjust the other thing. Quick question. How, in your opinion, can you realistically write a toxic relationship? Write it realistically. If we take, for instance, Jamie and Cersei, the best depiction that George R. Martin ever gave to Jamie and Cersei, beyond, like, in the book Game of Thrones, where their incestuous relationship is set up, okay, that works out well. It's super uncomfortable, but there you have it. It works. It's a thing. But beyond that, however, their relationship is just so weird. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on the funeral scene with those two. This is nasty. George R. Martin was off his rocker when he wrote that scene. It was not okay. If you know it, you know it, and I'm not going to describe it here. Oh, it's vile. Anyway, like, that's Martin just being ridiculous. Where Martin gets really realistic with Cersei and Jamie in a way that's not just sexuality for sexuality. Oh yes, all hot, all steamy and whatnot. Is when Jamie begins to realize, oh no, winter is coming. The war is still going on. The Seven Kingdoms are still torn apart. Cersei, we need to do something about this. We are kind of screwed. So let's kind of work this out. And Cersei's all like, well, if you're going to be if you're not going to praise me for all of my hard work and everything that I do for our children, then you can just go and you can fight and die for all I care. And so Jamie's like, well, I will fight. I will make it, and I'll create a better world. And so Jamie goes on this really weird quest where he's trying to become a better person in order to kind of stick it to Cersei while also trying to win Cersei. It's very complicated. It's very messed up, but it feels far more realistic of this guy who you realize has really screwed himself up and is now trying to find some kind of way of, well, making it better while definitely not doing a good job of it at the meantime. And Cersei then is like, what? He's abandoned me? Oh, that bastard. And so she starts doing all this stupid stuff, which, in all honesty, A Dance with Dragons is one of the worst books I have ever read. It's so bad, and Cersei is one of the reasons for that. And the thing is, this is like, it's not just, oh, it's bad because Cersei is an awful person. It's bad because George R. R. Martin actually tries to depict Cersei as a good person, even when she's doing all of these awful things. I'm like, no, she's bad. And people are like, no, well, obviously she's bad. And she's like, yes, but the story doesn't treat her that way. Oh, it's so frustrating. But it works. That toxicity works because you can see that it's not just the blatant weirdness that Martin's like, look at this, look at this awful incest stuff that I'm doing in my story. But rather actually seeing what that mentality does to people, and especially for people in power, how it destroys those around them and how it ruins the kingdom. That was realistic, and I'll be honest, that was good writing. Even if I hate Cersei and Jamie. Oh, such annoying characters. And Martin loves them. George loves Cersei and Jamie. Like he will sacrifice nearly any other character in order to ensure that he can do whatever he wants with Cersei and Jamie. He will keep Jon Snow dead to keep the incest train going. So I wouldn't doubt that even happening. All right, Bobby says, meanwhile, I'm unsure if I want to ever end up going into toxicity. Oh, wait, I do have it. The mascot horror trope, maybe inspired by SCP, of how the animatronics were treated behind the scenes. E for everyone cartoons and animated movies. Hey, maybe I got inspiration from serious stuff being shown in more low-key, light E for everyone content. And here's the thing, like if I ever get around to actually making this video about like writing steamy scenes and whatnot, there are some moments in other stories that just are wow. It's like, I can't believe you guys did this, and it's amazing that you did. One example is in ReZero in the second season when Garfield goes up against the bowel assassin, which I know is the wrong way of saying it. I just can't remember her name right now. So their fight is depicted as explicitly sexual, despite the fact that they are not actually getting hot and heavy with each other at all. And what it effectively is that it's a brilliant way in visual storytelling of showing, of showing off just how far gone both of these characters have kind of become. And it also depicts how the two of them, so both Garfield and Elsa, that's her name, Garfield and Elsa are both characters who are actually looking for love, but in the worst way possible. So you have these two toxic mentalities who meet each other and who in many ways they kind of deserve each other. And so as they're literally murdering each other, it's depicted as something more sensual. It's highly uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's just like, whoa, that actually fits these two based on everything that they are, who they are, what they've gone through, how they treat other people. It's just, you can just see it. It's just, oh, it's so wrong, but at the same time, it works so well. And it's this brilliant view into how messed up, unfortunately, these two characters are. I says ReZero's peak. That scene was disturbing, but I would never choose to remove it. That was an amazing scene. It's so good. It is such a good scene. Uh, yeah, Fabio says YouTube really messed up something on my end. The second thing you read, which I can't even delete now because I don't see it, it was misplaced due to the third one you read getting deleted earlier. Really? Oh man, that's so weird. Uh, I says it was perfect. Yeah, no, that scene between Garfield and Elsa is just, oh, it's so good. It's so good. And yeah, ReZero is absolutely worth the watch. Uh, and guy says, I haven't seen it yet. I should add it to the list. Oh, yes. Add ReZero to the list. ReZero is such a good show. I will say this. If you are squeamish, it is going to be a very hard watch because it gets pretty violent and gory. But, oh boy, it is so good. The character development of so many of the main characters, the drama, the complexity of the plot, the schemes, the way that time is manipulated in the story, all of it is just so dang good. It's such a good anime. Such a good anime. If you're able to read the light novel, you definitely get more. But from what I've read of the light novel, it was actually kind of disappointing. I feel like the anime really uplifts the light novel's content. But that's just my opinion. Guy says, I did say something earlier that got deleted. Oh my gosh. I don't know why YouTube is deleting people's stuff. That's so annoying. I'll repeat. You can have a villainous protagonist, but the story has to acknowledge the protagonist is a villain instead of insisting on their virtue. Yes, amen. I like that point. I agree with that. I agree with that to Sunday and back. Which is, again, why it bugs me that Cersei always gets treated as a much more, like, it's so weird because you know that Cersei's a bad character. She's the absolute villain. But the story continuously treats her as a far better person than she actually is, and it's so annoying. And so, and George will be like, well, she's a very his excuse would be she's a very flawed character, and it's like, no, she's a really messed up character. She's absolutely a villain, and the fact that you try to write her off as a hero is just confounding and annoying to me. So, yeah, there's so much I can rant about when it comes to Game of Thrones. I know that right now people are all back on the George R. R. Martin bandwagon, all feeling really great because the series Night of the Seven Kingdoms is doing so well. When the series is over and people have had their chance to be like, it's so good, it's so peak, I will probably do a video saying, yeah, this is really good. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is a perfect example of what George R. R. Martin can do when he gets out of his own way. Because when you remove a lot of the things that Martin loves to put into his stories, that is when you get Game of Thrones. Not Song of Ice, well, Song of Ice and Fire in total, but Night of the Seven Kingdoms is what you get when Martin is not allowed to wax eloquent and weird. I mean, he still will do it in other installments of Dunk and Egg, but like the first one, that is Martin when Martin is actually doing what he's actually when Martin's doing what he's actually good at. Complex characters, action. George R. R. Martin can actually do amazing action scenes. He just hates doing them, which is really weird to me. And engaging in actual politicking. The problem is that Martin prefers his schemes and his flipping of tropes and his gotcha moments way more than actually following through with anything that he writes. That's why A Song of Ice and Fire falls apart on itself by the end of the fifth book. George R. R. Martin helped write Elden Ring. You can tell because of the incest. Yes. And you can also tell that he didn't do much. And like he himself even admits, he actually didn't do much other than advise. And you can tell because Elden Ring actually has a complete story. Yes, I did take that dig. Take another drink of water right there. Fire says, in my case, I'll make it cartoonishly silly, in a silly world with a twist of the incompetent villain thing, where the heroes might also be weirdly very competent. So the villain gets into pace some other way. Backs and forths or whatever. All right. Got a good idea going on right there. So, I'm going to admit to you guys, I'm beginning to feel my voice going a little bit. I'm so glad that the cough is now over and done with. But having a job where I don't actually have to constantly talk to people, my vocal cords do not get the exercise that they need for 3 to 4 hour streams like I once did. So I think I'm going to have to start winding it down here. Real quick, Survivor says, I might not be squeamish to ReZero if modern Mortal Kombat plus classic and recent God of War experiences would help me all for it. Maybe so. If you're used to very gory scenes, then you'll probably will be fine. I think one of the things that makes ReZero's gore uncomfortable is it's really good at situational horror. And also because a lot of the characters are very young, who you get to just see absolutely eviscerated. A good comparison would be Made in Abyss. Made in Abyss, if it was all adult characters, would not be anywhere near as uncomfortable. But because it's a bunch of really young characters who are just being absolutely brutalized by their journey, that's what really makes it very uncomfortable. Guy says, I give props for Martin for writing the world building and lore of Elden Ring. There's still a lot of things that feels like fetishes than necessary, though, except for a certain character. Yeah, I would love to know. Here's the thing. I would genuinely love to know what all Martin did in the making of Elden Ring. For one thing, I want to know just how involved he was, because it's like, dude, you need to finish Winds of Winter. And he is constantly trying to find ways of basically distracting himself. So it's like, was this just a passing dalliance and that can be forgiven because it's a great game? Or did you sacrifice like 2-3 years of time you should have spent writing, working on a video game? It's like, I wouldn't doubt if it was the 2 to 3 years scenario, because Martin is like insistent that he avoid writing Winds of Winter in any way possible. Certainly stuff I shouldn't have seen that young, that's for sure. Yeah, it goes for me too. Watching Braveheart at a young age, it's probably one of the reasons why I am the way I am today. So in a way, I kind of understand. Some people can write awful things because they're awful, and some people like the feeling of, oh, damn, that's awful. Yeah, that's kind of the way Martin is. He really, really enjoys his more demented scenes for whatever reason. Man, I'll just say this because I enjoy telling this to people, and it always makes them uncomfortable, but it's so true. George R. R. Martin, when it comes to writing his hot and steamy scenes, so one of the reasons why they continuously get longer and dumber as the books progress is because Martin himself kind of gets bored with them. You can tell as the series progresses that he's like, I need my explanations. I need to have these scenes, but he doesn't enjoy them as much anymore. And so they each become more and more obscene and ridiculous. And it's just like, and it's like, and you can hear his old man giggle. Like right when it ends, you can tell this is the point where George giggled to himself. And he's like, yes, that's exactly what I want. And you're just like, that was too much. No, that like with Stephen King. Why did you go that far? Oh boy, watching Goodfellas when you're not even above 6. Oof, man, guy, what were you doing? I feel like that's solely for writing physical injury. It's a strange feeling. Again, each author has their own experience. I love writing really, really awkward scenes. I know from talking with other people who have read my stories, they're all like, "Why did you do this? This is so uncomfortable." And I'm like, "Oh, because I loved it. I loved it." But then there's other moments where I'm just where again, like writing more intimate scenes is difficult for me to do because it's something I'm not very comfortable with. So there are people who would ask, like, how can you not be comfortable with writing that, but you're totally fine with writing this really uncomfortable, awkward scene between two characters? I'm like, it based on from writer to writer, we all have our strengths, weaknesses, and weirdness. Most of Stephen King stuff seems more like the product of his substance abuse. Yeah. Some of his early stuff definitely has that. Man, back in the day, where when writers could just crank stuff out to their editor, and then be like, "Here, editor, here's my stuff. Now edit it and make it good." That was a lot of like Stephen King's early works, and also the works of like people like Hemingway, and who else? But like, no, Hemingway would go on a bender. He would write while drunk and high, and then when he was done, he would then submit his work to his editor, and his editor had to somehow make sense of his insanity. The same thing for Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson would also just like be off his rocker while writing, and then be like, "Okay, editor, make it nice." And then when the editor's all like, "I want to change this thing," and then he'd be like, "No, when I say make it nice, I just mean like fix my spelling mistakes and maybe some of my grammatical mistakes. Everything else is perfect. Perfect, I say." Guys, as Goodfellas was on, I thought the guys looked very nice in the suits. I mean, they do look good in the suits. I popped in on the restaurant scene of all scenes. Okay. Oh boy. Yeah. Fabio, me dreading the Chris will lose an arm hand theory certainly tells me I have a moral limit somewhere on where and when I care for injuries like that. I mean, yeah. Oh, let's say if you ever feel like a slight tingle of like sympathetic pains for something awful that happens to a character, I mean, we've all been there. Now I'm wondering if I had seen Dragon Ball much older, would I be utterly shocked at future Gohan missing an arm? Huh. So I have a scene where a protagonist is getting tortured, and I vividly described the act of spiking, when where hot iron nails are hammered into a person's hand joints, and I literally had to pause, tell myself to slow down because that was gory. Yeah, that's pretty intense. That's pretty intense. So this actually then brings me to a topic of know your audience, know who you are writing for. So, for instance, in my book series, The Legend of the Ten Lords, like I get pretty descriptive with some stuff, but and with some events, like how some characters just get absolutely annihilated. But my audience is primarily teens to young adults. Teens to young adults have seen a lot of crazy things. I once had a student come up and show me a guy getting split in half on the subway. Pretty gory. And then he was shocked that I didn't even that I barely batted an eye at it. And he's like, "What's wrong with you, Mr. Jensen?" And I'm like, "I've seen a lot of gory stuff, man, and you shouldn't even be watching this." Anyways, you know your audience. You're like, okay, what are these? You need to get to know your audience. You need to be like, what is it that this particular demographic is expecting? What is the most that would be okay? And also, what's the least? Like, you don't want things to be so milquetoast that it's bland and boring. And you also don't want to go so over the top that it makes people uncomfortable and they stop reading or watching. And so you really need to get to know your audience, the do's, the don'ts, the okays, and the not okays, and then from there, be like, okay, some of these more intense scenes that I'm writing, is this actually like okay? Would this get me into too much trouble with the scene or with this group, or is this not enough for this group? Would this make them bored? Uh, so like for instance, in again in the Legend of the Ten Lords, because I'm writing to primarily a younger but slightly more mature audience. What that means to a certain extent is that like I can write kind of hot and heavy scenes, but definitely should not put in like a complete mattress mumbo scene. That's going too far. I can have violence, but I probably shouldn't describe in great detail what it's like for someone to have their entrails removed on a spindle. That's going way too far for a younger audience. So it's finding that balance, which isn't always easy, but it can be done. And that's just what you gotta do. So for your spiking scene, I say you could still have that. You just kind of have to find out, based on your intended audience, how much to actually describe. Because ultimately, the acts, you can actually put most acts into most stories for audiences above ages 14, ages 13 and 14. It's where you go into maybe too much detail that you really get yourself into a lot of trouble. Okay, let's see here. Guy says, I've only ever watched Dragon Ball when it was on and never understood what was going on. I tried watching the original recently and I still don't. So speaking of Dragon Ball, I saw Cell taking on a Battle Ball team all at the same time for I think my 7th or 8th birthday. Uh, Dragon Ball. I didn't grow up with cable, so Dragon Ball really meant nothing to me for the longest time. Speaking of then lots of the original was a gag manga turned into a comedy anime with certain tones at times, and I'm sure you should inform yourself of what's filler. No need to avoid it. No need to avoid it, in my opinion. It's only eventually gets more concise, serious, and all that. And that does explain a lot. Thank you for sharing, Fabio. And also for filler, I'd recommend only knowing what it is so you at least don't get confused at contradictions. The infamous anime filler. Say, I think that anime these days is getting better at avoiding filler and learning where and when it's appropriate to have anime original material that doesn't get too contradictory, or figuring out how to make it not contradictory. That's what we like to see. When I'm looking at you, Spy Family, you're doing a good job. Keep up the good work. um so so guys, like I said, I mean, I feel my voice going. We've been at this now for 2.5 hours, which has been a whole lot of really good fun. I've been enjoying it, but I do feel like it's time for me to give my voice a rest. So for those that, so again, coming back to, I know we've had requests to join the Discord. If you wish to join the Discord, please make sure that you comment either on this video in the comments once it's finally done, or on any one of our other videos, in order to engage, in order to begin the interview process. Pass the interview, boom, you get the link. You get to join the Discord for free. And if anyone has any recommendations or requests for what they want to have in a dedicated writing episode in the future, then please comment as well on any of our videos, and we'll figure out how we can best accommodate and give you a good solid writing lesson that will hopefully give you the tools and the insights that you need in order to improve your writing. With all that being said, everyone, thank you so much for joining me on this stream tonight. And don't worry, G Turtle, it's okay if you weren't too active for this stream. It was great that you popped on in, that you contributed a little bit, and I hope to everyone that my little rant in the middle about the different archetypes of making for subplots, I hope that helps out. And I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, y'all, tschüss.